Thanks for joining me for this episode of She Got Next. My guest today is Stacy Johns, the president of the LA Sparks. Before taking the role just 6 weeks ago, she spent 6 years with the LAFC and 16 years with the Indianapolis Colts. She's a Hoosier that is thrilled about taking on the challenge of helping write the next chapter for the iconic Sparks brand and that iconic sports region. Johns defines success for herself as taking on a new challenge and conquering it. The challenge you've signed up for as a new president of LA Sparks. I don't know how it hits you to hear that. The president of the LA Sparks. It's to align the Sparks with the Lakers and the Dodgers and take advantage of the core competencies among the three teams. That's what I've read it as. Yeah. I wonder, thinking about that challenge, what about it made you want to conquer it?
Yeah, I mean, I think over the last 6 years being in LA, I really love LA. It's funny. I think a lot of my friends thought I was crazy when I left the Midwest after 40 plus years. I'd never been out here. I didn't know what I was really getting myself into. But the challenge of creating a brand that resonates in this market is really fun. And doing it for LAFC for the past 6 years was awesome. And doing it in global football was something really different. But basketball goes really back to my roots. I mean, you start with my roots, but like when you're born in Indiana, you're born with a basketball, in your hand. I mean, I think they say, in 49 other states, it's just basketball. I mean, but Indiana, it's like life. It's like truly. Now the Colts, I worked with the Colts for a while. They tried to change that mentality of it being a football state. And I think, you look at what just happened with IU this year. They're like, sort of trying to, throw that down too. But I think people love basketball. In Indiana, and you grow up, everybody has a hoop in their backyard, whether you have a basketball court or if it's on grass, you learn to play pig and horse in your yard. So anyway, long story short, I love basketball. I've always loved basketball. So it's been really fun to like go back to, watching more basketball again, and especially women's basketball right now in the WNBA. Like the W has so much momentum. I have been looking for, you probably heard this in other podcasts too, like after being a part of Angel City and sort of watching Angel City, come to be under, being a tenant in our building and being a big part of it, it really showed me that part of my legacy one day needed to be actually running a women's organization. And so I've sort of been looking for the right opportunity. Obviously spent a couple of months at Bay, thought that could be it. But when this came up, not just the W, not just Los Angeles, but also working with Lon and Stan and the Dodgers, Lakers connection, it was sort of like one of those dream opportunities that I couldn't write for myself. So I'm super excited. I also think the Sparks have a legacy brand, but just don't have the cultural relevance they deserve yet. So it feels like a really interesting challenge to me where we have all this opportunity, W fans, people excited to be part of this, but like, we don't have enough Sparks fans. So that's like the challenge.
Well, you're right in saying that. I did see and hear in other interviews, you talk about the unique position the Sparks are in and that the WNBA is in a unique position now. They're celebrating 30 years and the Sparks have a legacy. When I think of the Sparks legacy, I think of Lisa Leslie, Candace Parker, and the movie Love and Basketball. But there's a lot of room for growth there. But because you're in a position working with ownership, leadership, that's a part of the Lakers organization and the Dodgers organization. I think about, let's have a conversation about this because I'm like, you are in a unique position to have this discussion because of that, those three teams. Yep. The NBA really broke through because of the rivalry of Magic and Bird. That rivalry went from college to the NBA and it broke open the league. Yeah. The Dodgers have their rivalry with the Giants. And so when people think about how to maintain this moment in time for women's sports, there's a debate about whether or not we should mirror some of those other teams and leagues and the men's professional teams and leagues who have really grown because of rivalries. They've grown rivalries within players, within regions. And in general, men are just the percentage-wise, are more likely to be a sports fan. Yeah. And even when you think about women's sports, the majority of women's sports fans are still men. Yeah. So there's that challenge, right? Like if men are attracted to sports in this way, we want to be able to speak to that, but also think about the uniqueness of women who become fans of sports because of this unique time. And what they really rely on is that in real life experience, that fan engagement. When you walk into the room, you feel welcome. They're buying more product. They're bringing their kids and it's a family experience. But because again, you are with the Lakers and the Dodgers who have that rivalry kind of history, I imagine you have to think about like what makes sense for what they have experienced, the legacy that they have, what makes sense for the Sparks, and then how do we also make sure we treat our fandom, the women who've been with us, been riding with us.
Yep.
We don't leave them in the dust, but we kind of widen the net of
Yep.
people who are in the stadium. Now that's a long setup, Stacy.
No, it's okay.
And thinking of the challenge, I'm like, I feel like it's a lot for you.
Yeah.
But again, you're uniquely positioned.
Yeah, I'm one. It's to me, it's really interesting and exciting because I think you're right. We have, if you come to a Sparks game now, there is a core fan base that loves our product, loves our team, loves the women that play, shows up, stays the entire game, win or lose. Like literally, I have not seen that. You don't see that as much in men's sports. Like at the end of the game, if the Dodgers are, either winning or losing by a lot, like you see people start to, shake early for traffic, which I mean, again, in LA,
it makes sense.
I respect. But at the Sparks games, people don't leave. Like, we've been winning by 20 before, we've been losing by 20 before, and people are there till the end. They want to be there. They don't want to miss a quarter break. To your point, the entertainment value is more important to the fans that come to women's sporting events than it is for men's sporting events. And I think that's the piece that I think is a really new challenge for me that I'm excited to tackle. Especially football. Like I was in football. Like if you add entertainment to men's football, it's almost a bad thing. People really come to watch the game. To your point, rivalries, Galaxy, LAFC, like people are coming to watch that, that just fierce, intense, competitive game on the pitch. Like that's what they want. And if you try to stray too far away from that, there are a lot of people who are not big fans of that. So we could get away with really awesome pride nights in LA. You can get away with some activation, but generally speaking, you're sticking to the core audience, core sporting event. This is a whole different ballgame to me. It's you just open up Pandora's box and you get what do you want to try? What do you want to do? Because I think it is a really different fan base. It is still men. It is still more predominantly men, although there are a lot more women and families. There's no question about that. But I do think the men that come to these games aren't the same men that are going to the other games. So that's the interesting part too. It's not necessarily the crossover is actually very small between Lakers and Sparks fans, but again, still predominantly men. So that's the interesting part for me is what do these men want that, they don't get at the Lakers games, and vice versa. I think the other really interesting thing that we're seeing now, since I've started is a lot of other athletes, especially male athletes, are interested in coming to our games. So I'm getting a lot of reach out from, basketball players, Rams players, who really love this sport and love watching, women, do amazing things on the court. And I do think the women's game is a little bit more true to basketball, speaking as a person who, if you look at the NBA and the style of play for the NBA games, it's fast, it's wild, it's crazy. It's almost outside of the realm of a possibility from when we were young and watched, the more traditional basketball. Women, WNBA is still these women can shoot, the shot percentages are insane. Technically they are so sound. But also I take my son who's 13, loves to watch these women block women. And it's still aggressive. It's still sport. It's still so competitive. So I think there's a lot, I do think rivalries could still be good in women's sports. I don't think they're as necessary, is what I think. I think you can get away with the entertainment value without the rivalry. Although, I told Jess Smith in my first time I talked to her at the Valks, I was I would love for us to create a rivalry. That would be awesome to me. We're right here. We're a couple hours apart. If you think, you said it, Giants, Dodgers. I mean, there's been some great rivalries on the coast. So, I love that. But I also think I don't have to have that, if that makes sense. I think it's okay not to have that. I think what's more important is the fans that we're going to need in the future are the children, the kids now. When you look at the fan base, what am I doing today to get those kids in, and what do those kids care about? And so fortunately I have one living in my house. Watching how he consumes sports and entertainment is so different. So he's on TikTok, he's on YouTube, he's watching plays, he's watching players and plays. He's not watching full games for the most part. He loves to watch and consume dunks and blocks and you know what I mean, all this crazy stuff. The highlights, yeah. And follow the stats and play fantasy, right? This is what 13-year-old boys and probably girls all like to do. And I think it's about the story. So I do think we have to be more intentional about telling the stories of these women. And, I think the rivalries almost come with the players more than with the teams right now. If you look at it, it's Paige was here. It's like Paige and KP, like, you're right. And like, that's what people are talking about for the game. They're not talking about sparks versus wings. They're talking about player versus player. You see that with Caitlin Clark. You see that with, like, a lot of these big names. And I do think we have to eventually figure out how to use that for our own brand while they're here. But I do think it's very, very important that we tell these stories of these women. And that's what the young people want. And that's what's going to get us fans going forward.
I think that is an important thing to be thinking about. So, one of the predominant conversations that have been happening about why the WNBA and now the NWSL, and now you got a professional baseball team that's starting in like 2 months, and the hockey teams. And there's so many professional women's leagues that have sprouted up and have had some early success because of the athletes themselves having the ability to tell their stories. We see their workout routines. We see like the drive, the grit, the grind that goes into games. And then we see their tunnel outfits, all those types of things. And and
then you hear about their drama, right? And who they're dating and like what makeup they wear. And like, this is the part that's very different than like men's sports to me. It's this sideshow that's happening outside of them being athletes, like who they are as people is so much more interesting, I think, than it is for the guys. I mean, the guys, you see male athletes cross over that way, but it's less to me. Like, this is just like, there's all these new brands that have opportunities to show up, whether it's makeup or skincare or clothing or, eyewear or whatever, all these things that women, are much more into and authentically, relate to. And then the young people love that too. So, I mean, it's like, even like what coffee they drink. Like, we did this partnership with Alfred Coffee, and that's like so authentically LA. And that put us in places and in social places where young girls were, and young women are. And that, I think, like, people like my daughter, who's 18, who had probably never seen a Sparks advertisement in her life, but showed up at Alfred, got her coffee, and had the sleeve is a Sparks logo. And she comes home and she's like, "Mom, look at your team." And so we have to get better about like showing up in LA where it's cool to show up for those young kids, boys and girls, to like really get those fans to start thinking about us as a more mainstream, like culturally relevant brand.
And thinking about, again, the relationship you have with the Lakers and Dodgers, you've only been there for a few months now. And I imagine you're still kind of in the assessment period. You're understanding what those teams have done well and what things you can adapt and or leave behind. And what other things have kind of stood out to you as like, this is something that we want to take advantage of? This is something that doesn't make sense for our fans?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is like week 5, so I'm like super early in. So I'm definitely still learning. But I think very important for us to think more like behind the scenes of what I'm doing, and then what's like fans see as far as like what we're going to learn from the Dodgers and Lakers the most, Dodgers especially. It's like how they use data, like how they price tickets, how they figure out who their fans are, how they target their fans. Like, so it's more about how they operate and using that foundation to then tailor it to what is important for a women's team. So like, I don't want to necessarily do things like the Dodgers do things like the Lakers do. I want to borrow their brains on how they have created the back of house. That's to me what's been so impressive, when those of us that like know the business of the Dodgers, like watching what they have been able to do, it is like incredibly, it's incredible. So, think about how they've done ticketing, how they do group promotions. Like, maybe we don't want bobbleheads necessarily, like, but like think about like how those premium giveaways have worked for them and how they collaborate with different athletes and brands and whatever to do those things. So it's like using their techniques, but tweaking them for a women's team, essentially.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because again, you're working with an organization that has 2 professional men's teams that you are getting the data from, analyzing that and adapting it to women's sports fans. And I'm from the Bay Area.
Yeah.
And we had an influx of teams. The Valkyries, Bay FC, Love is coming. The Volleyball Professional League is starting in January 2027, and some other teams that are coming with hockey. And one of the conversations I've had with some of those leaders about how they are sharing information with those other women's teams. All rising tides lift all boats. And I wonder, in thinking about Angel City, and again, the Tackle Football League, the Flag Football League, even USC and UCLA, those women's basketball teams have stars. And those schools are really taking advantage of highlighting those athletes. I'm wondering, with the leaders that are in place within those organizations, How often are you guys having coffee and talking about
So
best practices and what
the
have you?
first phone call I made when I knew I was taking this job was to Willow Bay, because Willow and I have become close since she purchased Angel City, and I, tried to be of help to her as she was sort of learning, learning the sport, learning our venue, learning how we could help, learning the history of Angel City and LAFC. So we have a connection, and I of course also, Julie Ehrman and I are like very close. I really want to watch Angel City continue to grow. And, you look at cities like Portland and what they're trying to do with their women's sports teams, right? Put them all together, be like the hub of women's sports. So I called Willow and said, look, like, no offense to any other city, but if any city can be an awesome women's sports hub, like, it's ours, right? So let's like think about how we can work together and how we can do something awesome for not just like our two teams, but like women's sports as a whole, like in our ecosystem. She's got this incredible, connection to USC, being the dean there and the communication school, and they're just pumping out talent right into this industry. So it's like, how can we, work together to like co-create talent in this region? So just like, not just like, how do we make our sports teams better, but like, how do we work together to create a women's sport ecosystem? To your point, USC, UCLA, Angel City, Sparks, like, we are better together. So one of the first things I did, I think my first week, I had my rookies at an Angel City game. She's now had her rookies at a Sparks game. We're doing LA Sports Day together in a couple of weeks. So like trying to show up together. We actually have a fair amount of crossover. Like when I look around fan base wise, like we had a Pride game on Sunday, and I see a lot of people wearing the Angel City Pride scarves. So like there's a lot of crossover there. And there's, the fans of just women's sports like love both teams. So no one has to pick. I mean, our seasons cross over a little bit, but we don't, either one of us have that many games where you can't really be a fan of both teams. Like there's room for all of us here. We also have volleyball coming. So I've talked to her. So like we will, I think, all really try to work together. Cause I mean, I think what's always hard for me to understand is when I took the Bay FC job for a couple months, one of the first questions I got was like, oh, aren't you worried about Jess Smith and the Valkyries? And it's like, nobody asked me that when I came to LAFC, and we had like 2 MLS teams. Like nobody was like, oh my gosh, like, why would you take a team, like knowing you have all this competition? It's like, there's 12 sports teams in LA, like men's, women's, like, you know what I mean? So it's just like, why people are so focused on, we can't have 2 women's teams in one market is crazy to me. Like, and I actually think we have a chance to like be better together, to your point, be stronger together, share information, share data, like how we do broadcasting, how we do like podcasts, can we create things, co-create things together that are more like LA women's sports versus like worrying about it's Angel City versus Sparks, or, Love versus Sparks. Like I don't see it that way. I see it as like completely coexisting. And that's how it was on the men's side really for all these years. Of course, you're all competing for partners. At some level, there's some competition there.
Yeah.
But like for fandom, this is a giant city. It's like second largest DMA. Like, it's like, we don't need to be competing like for it's like, we can all do this at the same time and be great together.
And going back to the decision to come to the Sparks, you mentioned your brief time with Bay FC. And I have to say, when I read about you saying yes to that role, my first thought was, how brave.
Yeah.
Because when you get a dream job, like the president of Bay FC, a very new franchise, I can imagine it felt like, oh my gosh, I've made it to a mountain. I can't believe I got here.
Yes.
I get to take the reins. But to say yes to an even bigger opportunity, you're putting yourself at risk of conversations. You're putting Bay FC at risk about how they're viewed. You're thinking about people who may say things like, why is she selfish? Why is she thinking that she deserves this when she already got that? Whatever kind of conversations may have been happening in your mind.
Yep.
My first thought was, how brave to say yes to the opportunity. There are a couple of quotes that I want to read to you, something that made me think like, I understand potentially why she said yes. This opportunity with the LA Sparks brings together 2 things that matter deeply to me: leading an iconic franchise at a pivotal moment for women's basketball, and being back in Los Angeles with my family full time. The other quote is, I am a mom of daughters, and I wanted them to be able to look at me and say, I didn't give up. In sports, a lot of times you're the only woman, or you're one of few. So you're not just making decisions based on what your desire is. You're always thinking about the people who are watching, your own daughters, young ladies, or women who are just a little bit below you on the totem pole. You're thinking about what kind of legacy and what kind of message you're giving them. And again, I'm thinking that looking at these quotes and understanding you saying yes, I'm imagining that's what helped you be brave. And maybe brave isn't the word for it.
No, I think
I'm giving like this is what was going through my mind, Stacey. I'm like, I want to talk to her because of this move.
I would say that it felt pretty risky and it did feel like a leap. So I think brave is probably appropriate. But you're right in how the decision goes. I mean, every day when this was going through my head and I was, this was like a very short process. Like the phone call of like, this is an opportunity to like saying yes was very short. But every like morning I would wake up and I would become a little clearer because I do have an executive coach, which really helps me think through and like prioritize things in my life. And what I was really feeling over those 3 months that I was there was I had a really difficult time. My kids are older, so they don't need me. In my mind, I was like, oh, they don't need me every moment of every day. But there was something about not being physically in the same place with them that was much more disturbing than what I realized as a mom. And I just realized that like I wanted other people who sat in shoes like this to realize it's okay to say, I thought I had a dream job and I thought I made the right decision, but then this other thing came along and it's like actually better. And that's okay. And I felt like in the moment, like nobody would question a man who did that. I think women definitely get questioned harder at every turn. And not to make it like it's just harder for us, but in sports and male dominated fields, it truly is like, because I think a lot of times women get to these positions and then they fail in them. And that's to me bad for other women. So I didn't want this to look like a failure for women. And honestly, my career, you look at it, it's been like 16 years here, 5 years here, 6 years here. I mean, this is like uncharted territory. Like, so I was like freaking out, to be honest. But what really grounded me was like, I am a mom first. And I think that's okay. I needed people to know that that was okay. And I needed the people who would work for me for years, who had just started working for me, who would work for me in the future to know that like, it's okay to pick your family and you should always pick your family first. And if anyone shamed me for that or didn't hire me in the future, I was okay with that. Like, because you shouldn't hire me. And if you don't realize that, like, if a push comes to shove, I don't pick my children like first, that's always going to be the answer. And then on the business side, it became a no-brainer because it's just like, I loved marketing in LA. Like, and I sort of realized that after I left it. It's like one of those things like where you don't know what you have until it's gone at some level, not necessarily my old job, but like just the Los Angeles market and knowing it as well as I did. And then getting to the Bay market, and the Bay market is so different. It is like very, very different. And I was learning it. And again, had this not come up, it'd have been a great challenge. I would have, probably figured it out and, had a different story to tell. But like given the opportunity to come back here, do something in women's basketball for the W, it was just, and work for people like Lon and Stan and, people who are icons and just like experts in their field. And just, it was impossible to say no to. But to your point, like I woke up the day the news was coming out and I was like, I don't know what today's going to bring. But I got a lot of, wow, you're really brave again kind of comments from people.
Oh, nice.
And you continue to inspire me to like take control of my career, which is what you continue to do. And so that made me feel really good about it. But I had no idea. And I turned my phone off and I went to practice actually, because I went to practice to meet the team. I knew that I only knew the GM. So meet the coach, meet the team, meet the basketball staff. And they were so warm and welcoming. And meanwhile, my phone was turned off when that announcement went out. I had no idea what was happening. I turned my phone on. I think I had the most text message I've ever had in my whole life, like hundreds of emails and messages, but all really, really positive. Like and it felt really good because I had sort of decided no matter what the message was, I was happy which is why I just shut it off and didn't respond to it right away. But yeah, like by the end of 2 days, I think I'd responded to everyone, but it was a very good feeling to know that, putting your family first, people still are okay with that because it's the right thing.
If it's the right thing for you, like you said, it doesn't really matter. I mean, you're the only one who could live this life, but it has to feel rewarding, confirming for other folks to say like, yes. And thank you for being that example. I'm so glad that's the kind of reception.
No, it was
really for you, Stacy. I don't even know you.
Yeah, no, it was really good. And it felt good because I think the first morning I woke up after the first phone call where I thought about this, I was like, oh my gosh, if I do this, I'm going to ruin my career. Like those were the first words of my ears. Like, you're going to ruin your career. And you're also going to like have people really pissed at you and disappointed, to your point, like on the base side. To the positive, I think I actually felt like the day I started there, I mean, the Bernie, who they put in president role after I left, who was there before me. And I got there, and within the first week, I was like, they really like should have given this guy a shot. Like that was actually the first thing I thought was like, wow, he's been sitting here for a couple of years and he really gets it. And he's so much more than finance. And, so that was the other part I like hang my hat on, feeling good about, is like, I created an opportunity for somebody by leaving. So I tried to like put that hat on as well, which was like, I really believed that he would actually be better than me in some ways because he's from the Bay Area. He's grown up in the soccer culture of the Bay Area. He has kids, he has daughters, he gets it. And so I was like, well, I don't think everyone right away was like thrilled with me leaving. I'm sure they weren't. I do think people appreciated that I had identified someone, and I had already told them that too when I got there. I was like, this guy's great, and you should be thinking about him for the future.
I'm really glad that it has worked out the way that it has. It's felt positive for you at every point. Yeah. And again, you chose yourself. I want to go back to something you said in your deliberation process. You said you have an executive coach that you kind of talk these things over with. In my other world, I'm a brand strategy consultant. Okay. And one of the things I talk to everybody about, men and women, is the importance of having their own executive board. And the 4 seats that I encourage people to fill are the cheerleader, the critic, the consoler, and the connector. And thinking about your professional journey, I wonder, like, let's go through those 4. Like, if there's a person or a group of people who have been like cheering you on, no matter what choices you make, where you land, they are Team Stacy. They've got champagne chilled. They're ready to celebrate every win. Yeah. A couple people coming to your mind for that role?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. One of my good friends, Erica, who is also another, like, what I would call badass woman, working not in sports, but in another male-dominated governmental field, working for vets. At every turn, no matter what has happened in my life, personally and professionally, like she's like always made me feel sure that it was the right decision. You know what I mean? And just like always like, yeah, like let's go no matter what it is. And shows up, supports, to your point, like buys whatever t-shirt of whatever team I'm cheering for, follows them, knows what's going on with them. So just incredible like that. And then I think in my adult years, my daughters, to be honest, like my daughters who are 20 and 18, like the last 10 years when they've actually known what mom does, they are so proud. And they are the ones who, I mean, when I was like, I'm going to do this Bay thing, which obviously was taking me away more from them, they were like so proud, so excited. But then when I came home, they were, they were like, we of course didn't want you to go, but we were never going to tell you not to chase your dreams, mom, because like you taught us to chase our dreams. And so they've like been incredibly supportive. And even my son will be the first person. I'm pretty humble. If you meet me, I won't be like, oh, I'm the president of Sparks. People will be like, what do you do? I'm like, oh, I work for the Sparks. And then, we kind of get there eventually. My son will be like, she kind of runs it. Like he's always like been in his own like special way, like really proud. And also, a few times people have been like, I've given people tickets and they're like, oh, do you work in the ticketing department? And he's like, no, she like is the boss, like the real boss. Like, so he's always been like his own special form of cheerleader, which is awesome. So yeah, I think like all those people for sure are there.
What about the critic? Someone who challenges you when you're about to make moves, helps you question, and they're doing it from a place of they want the best from you, not just someone who questions you and is like, I don't know, Stacy, but they're like, I'm thinking about the best possible outcomes. I'm looking around corners that you haven't looked around.
Yep. I mean, my executive coach is definitely one of those. I mean, her big question is always, are you running to something? Are you running from something, Stacy? Which one is it? Which is also, it was a really great question to ask me.
Yeah.
I have a friend, Chris Vicari, who is a boss at the NFL. She's another one where if I call her and be like, I'm thinking about this, she's like, is that like good enough for you? Or is that like not enough for you? She's always like asking like, are you sure it's the right step for you? I mean, when I went and took the job in LA, I think at first she might've been on team, like, I'm not sure if this is the right idea. And then like a couple of years in, she's like, wow, like I was wrong about that. You know what I mean? Like, people, it's like, in the best way. And to your point, like in my best interest. So I think those people for sure. And then I think my mom and dad also, like, I mean, they're obviously so supportive, but like have always also like made me stop and think about things. Like, you know, like, is this the right thing for you personally or professionally in life?
I'm going to sit with that. Are you running away from something or running towards something? That's a great question to
It's so
ask of
good.
yourself,
It's
or
so
have
good.
people ask of you to just
Yeah.
kind
Yeah.
of check in. Like, am I doing the thing for the right reason? That's incredible. What
Yeah.
about the consoler, the person who might have wine ready for you to cry into and to share stories? Somebody who is always there when things don't
Boy.
go quite as well. Stacey, you've racked up wins. There's a lot of
Yeah.
things that you have done to
Yeah.
celebrate, but I wonder, every now and then it may be something that
Yeah.
you
I
need
mean,
to
like
share.
I would say like my best friend, Ashley, like here. And then I also had, my friend Paula from Indiana, like who I still am close with. Like they're the people who are like, let's get a drink, to your point. Like it's margarita night. Like we've had a bad day, or, you know, no matter what happened, it'll be okay. You know what I mean? Like, and we don't have to talk about it. Like, you know what I mean? That kind of thing, like, which is great.
And the last one is the connector. Another theme, in addition to you wanting to take on challenge, something that I've read in a number of your interviews is the importance of male allyship. And
Mm.
again, when you're the one of a few or one only woman on a
Yep.
staff, it takes other people
Yep.
talking about you in rooms that you're not in
Yep.
and saying what you want out loud. So
Yes.
they can say, like, I understand your professional goals. I'm going to make
Yep.
sure you get this experience. I'm going to put you
Totally.
up for that promotion. So thinking again about those male allies, and I shouldn't say it has to be a male ally that you want to put in this particular board seat, but again, that was a theme that I saw
Yeah.
running through some of your interviews.
No. I feel like the problem was, I think when I was younger, it was like, oh, get female mentors, female allies. When you started in sports, when I did 23 years ago, they didn't exist. They weren't there. I mean, there were so few. If you tried to like seek them out, like honestly, everyone wanted to be their like mentee. You know, everybody was trying to get with the same 5 or 6 women who were in sports. So, and it really was true that in your organizations, if you wanted to like move up, it had to be men. So, and I honestly would say for me, it started with like we had Professor Hicks at Butler, who was like literally the maestro of where you got your internship. So getting in with him was how you got your internship. And so I ended up being one of his top 2, and I got to choose where I went for my internship. And like him choosing a woman back when there were probably 4 women out of 25 in a class, right? In our finance class, like was, you know, I think somewhat forward thinking, like in some respects, because he also would, you know, say like, don't let me down and like quit this after a year. Cause you know, I think women would go in, they would get married, they have kids, they leave public accounting. I didn't do that, but I think that was a huge getting into Ernst & Young and having that first start there was really helpful. The partner, one of my first partners, Tim Cash, was also he was a connector for sure. When you think about connectors, he knew everyone. He had been a partner for 30 years. He could have easily been one of those old school male partners that knew that women didn't stay long and not prioritize me, but very much prioritized me as a mentee of his. Ended up getting me my job at Eli Lilly, my next job, and then had like stayed in contact with me for years and was always willing to help connect me with people and help me. Just a really awesome person. And at the Colts, there were actually a lot of men at the Colts who, you know, I was the only female. I was the only female vice president. To get in any room, I needed somebody else's help mostly. So I think I had several, you know, and then I would say I got to LA, and, you know, the person I haven't mentioned who almost fills every bucket of this, which is like Larry Friedman, who is my fiance, was formerly my boss, and is like the reason I sit in the seat that I sit in today. And it's mostly because of the confidence he gave me first as someone who worked for him, just like knowing I was strong enough and good enough and smart enough to do this, and removing my barriers from my head, which was really important, but also like the most connected and incredibly connected person that I know, like, and connected in a way that is so authentic. Like when he connects with people, and he's teaching me how to do the same thing now, and has over the last, you know, 6 or 7 years. It's like, you don't just connect with people, like you connect with them, you learn something about them. And then like when you think of them like a year from now and you haven't talked to them, you text them or you send them an email, and just like keeping that like really, really authentic, genuine connection with people then makes people want to do things for you, makes people want to help you. And, also genuinely wanting to help those people too. So like making sure not I'm just connecting up to help people, I'm connecting down to also like help influence, which is what he's like always been so good at and has like taught me to do. And so I think I could put him in all the buckets. He's definitely the reason I took the last 2 jobs I took, where he was just like, this is what he's like, it's time for you to fly. Essentially, you have to go do this. So yeah, I've been very fortunate. And I'd say the last person I mentioned is Larry Berg, who is the one of the managing owners of LAFC. He was the person that when I was about a year in and I was like, all right, what else? I mean, I'm getting the feedback that I'm doing a great job and my CFO job, but like, what else can I do? And he's like, your voice is important. He's like, when you speak, like people don't always listen. You need to speak louder because you're in a room full of men. And it was true. He's like, so I want you to talk over us sometimes. He's like, because it's important. And just like giving me that permission was really important. So
let me ask you about that last piece there about speaking up louder in the room. Did you notice that you weren't being heard, or you were being quieted? Did it make you shrink?
I think at the beginning, no, I don't know that I shrunk. I think it was true that they were also comfortable. I was joining, everybody else who was in that boardroom had been together since the beginning. So 2014, I joined in 2020. So I was like the new girl. So not only was I a woman, I was like new woman. So I think at the beginning, it was just like, there was this like cadence with people on who spoke and how they spoke. And it was like, where do I, jump in or whatever. And I think, so he's right. I don't think I was afraid. I think I just needed permission to speak over and like really be like heard in certain sections of like the conversation. So it just was really, it was thoughtful of him. And he also was like, learn to sell and go sell, which then made me push on my boss on like, I need to go sell and then start doing that. And then that's how I got involved in the naming rights selling and ended up selling the BMO deal, which is really it was a pivotal change in my career.
Well, I'm glad that you've had many people to fill multiple seats, multiple cheerleaders, critics, consolers, and connectors. I'm excited for the move that you make. I'm excited to see the legacy of the Sparks being built upon and the new things that you try, and it taking its place next to the Dodgers, next to the Lakers, its rightful place as a team, as an organization that people want to show up for and celebrate and feel welcomed into the family. Thank you so much for your time, Stacy. This has been incredible.
No, thank you. It was very nice to meet you.
And thank you again for watching this on YouTube, listening on Spotify, following along on Instagram and Blue Sky. Until next time.